for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked the young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Good Friday evening, everyone. My name is Matt Ohayon. Tony is off today. That means it's Friday. Welcome to your weekend and welcome to the Sick Podcast, brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Energy Transportation Group is a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. Get ready for the spring break power weeks at Playground. The cards are hot and the vibes are chill at Playground from February 27th to March 9th with 12 exciting events and a cool $400,000 prize in guarantees. So get ready to stack your chips and soak up the action. This break is no bluff. Visit playground.ca for details. We're also brought to you by Bittt Tibi beer. Bittt Tibi has launched their ultra new lager, a refreshing, thirst-quenching beer, perfect for those chilly winter days with only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, 4% alcohol per can, available in packs of 6 and 12 in grocery stores all around the province of Quebec. Ultra light and ultra refreshing. And of course, by Betway, go all the way with Betway and get a free bet up to $200 if your first bet loses. Scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the details section to create an account and redeem your welcome offer. Offer is available for only new customers. Terms and conditions apply. Offer is not available in Ontario, and you must be 18 years or older. Please play responsibly. Well, you know, I'm wearing the jersey. You know what we're going to talk about. I know the NHL is about to resume tomorrow, but it feels like we're coming out of the playoffs right back into the regular season. So let's talk about Canada's win over the U.S. with my usual Friday guest. He's Stu Cowan of the Montreal Gazette. Stu, how are you feeling on this beautiful Friday?
Yeah, feeling very proud to be Canadian. I think as we all are. That was, I wrote a column this week. That game went beyond hockey. Unfortunately, politics got involved. Donald Trump got involved. Got ugly in some ways, booing of national anthems. But at the end of the day, we're still the best at hockey. And Connor McDavid, arguably the best player in the world right now, best player in Canada, scores a winning goal. It was a beauty, a good goal. I'm just so happy it wasn't a fluke goal or a video review for offside. It was just a solid shot, a solid goal. Austin Matthews, I don't know how you let Connor McDavid wide open like that in the slot in overtime, but that's what happened, and we had reason to celebrate.
Yeah, it's tough for Austin Matthews because I actually found he had a pretty good game. Mm-hmm. He could have ended that game twice in overtime, and he was robbed both times by Jordan Binnington in overtime. Yep. Jordan Binnington stood on his head. He put a lot of doubters,
including me,
to rest. Yep, me too. Me too. I think we were both talking on it on the podcast last week, saying how I don't know about this guy. He's letting goals in the middle of the net. Did the same thing. It was almost disaster against Finland the other day. And then, Sidney Crosby settles that game down, puts it to rest. And then Jordan Binnington, just an unbelievable performance. If that game doesn't go to overtime and that game ends in regulation, we're probably talking about Jordan Binnington more than we're talking about Connor McDavid today, because he was just absolutely incredible. It's something about that building in a big game for him.
Binnington should have been the first star. I mean, McDavid doesn't get a chance to score that goal if it's not for Binnington. Those saves he made in overtime were spectacular. And kudos to John Cooper, because before the tournament started, the first day in Brossard, when they practiced and we asked him about Binnington, when he had named it was Binnington was the goal. He started the next day. And he said he's got fire in his belly. He said this guy likes to be in the the big stage. You say he won a Game 7 in Boston, and when you need that big save, he's going to do it, and he did. And there was a great scene after the game with Cooper hugging Binnington. I would have loved to have had I imagine they were mic'd up because for all these NHL videos they're doing, they've had mics on these guys, and it's going to be really interesting to see just what he said to Binnington after the game. But they were both, John Cooper showed faith in him, and Binnington paid him back, and it was nice to see. I'm watching the game. I played in the Kirkland Old Timers last night at 7, and we finished in time to start watching the game. Watching the game with all these guys and my buddies and that, I'm saying, Binnington's like everybody's saying he makes me so nervous. Like, we're so used to seeing Carey Price in Montreal where everything is position and he makes saves look easy and he never loses his net. And here's Binnington flopping all over the place. Sort of, I'm old enough to remember Rogie Vachon with the Canadiens. Reminded me of Rogie Vachon, would flop all over the place and make all these wild, crazy saves. And Binnington did it. Like, it wasn't. Nobody's teaching that goalie style, I don't think, in today's goaltending camps or whatever in the summer. But he was effective, and as John Cooper said, he was a battler, and he didn't let the spotlight get too bright for him. And those saves in overtime were just spectacular. And to me, he's the main reason that Canada won, and he should have been the first star of the game.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that because just his performance is, you even notice this against Sweden, and that's really when, a lot of people. Nobody really knew who was going to take the net. Obviously, you thought because of where Adin Hill was sitting at practice that he was going to be the starting goaltender of the tournament, but it ended up being Binnington. And there was no clear-cut right choice. There was no, dominant, goaltender. We weren't littered with talent like the U.S. was in the net. So when he gets to start and he's playing and the Canada's playing against Sweden, a couple goals went into the middle of the net, and he should have had them. But then in that overtime, and at the end of that third period, he made some massive stops, just unbelievable saves that after watching the goals that he allowed, these saves, it kind of felt like they came out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And you saw that he had that ability. So he clearly, John Cooper was correct that he is a battler, because for him to let up those, easy goals, or as Tony likes to call them, bananas, but then come up with these massive saves, you're thinking, okay, he has it. Maybe it was just an off night. And then they play the U.S. and again, lets in a couple dribblers, and then really the calls start to get big. We should probably see Adin Hill against Finland. Stuck with him. And, just the rest is history. It was just really, really a solid all-around performance by Jordan Binnington. And unless he's injured, I think he's the odds-on. How could you not be the odds-on favorite to be the starter next year?
Yeah, I mean, he made one save last night with his head. Like, he was falling off balance, right? Falling back into his net, and he got his head in the way of the puck to make a save. It was just – and then on the other hand, Hellebuck's not the reason the U.S. lost, but he's never won the big game, right? He's never won for Winnipeg in the playoffs. And Marty St. Louis talks sometimes about how sometimes as a coach, you just have to have a gut feeling. And John Cooper had a gut feeling about Binnington, and he was right. And now, Hellebuck, that'll carry on now. Can this guy win the big game? And I mean, you leave Connor McDavid alone like that in the slot, not too many goalies are going to make that save. So I'm not putting the blame on him, but it's just reputation, and that's got to get in guys' minds also, right? When the more you lose those big games, the more you get that reputation of not being able to win them. And Hellebuck's in that situation now, and we'll see, if he can change that with the Winnipeg Jets in the playoffs. But for last night, I just thought, as I mentioned off the top, it's too bad that politics and all that got involved with it, because the hockey was just spectacular. Mm-hmm. I mean, it showed why hockey is the greatest game in the world, in my opinion. It was just there was periods in last night's game they went like 6-7 minutes without a face-off. It was just up and down. The referees put their whistles in the pocket, but it wasn't a bad thing. Like, there was no real flagrant. There was one sort of breakaway Marchand maybe could have been a penalty, but it went both ways. And the hockey was just spectacular. And the way these guys played, and Marty St. Louis talked about it this morning after the Canadiens practice, about just the smart, like, there's not a lot of scoring chances, right? You think all these incredibly offensively talented players on the same ice, the score is going to be 7-6 or something like that. But as Marty said, no, these guys are just so smart, and they don't play high-risk hockey. And he's trying to get the Canadiens. He spoke with the Canadiens today, but that's why you can't make these blind backhand passes through the middle. You got to make there's times in the game you just need to make the smart play. And we just saw smart play after smart play after smart play. I mean, watching Drew Doughty and seeing why he was added to that team, he never makes it. And Cale Makar is a freak. I mean, he's a freak. I mean, he is You know, he's a 6 foot, 200-pound Lane Hudson. Like, he wins puck battles. He makes those breakout passes. He's all over the ice. I mean, they really, not having him that first game against the U.S. is a big reason why Canada didn't win the first game against the U.S. He is just, you know, he might be the most dominant player in the NHL right now. I mean, other guys, you know, forwards, you can be the forward defenseman. The amount of minutes he plays and the way he gets the puck up to the big players that want the puck. I mean, I watched him, I don't know how many times last night, go in the corner, body check a guy off the puck, get the puck, and boom, a pass, and they're out of the zone. And he did it over and over and over again. It just, you know, he can skate. He's you know, he skates like Mike Matheson. He has the vision of Lane Hudson. He's got size. He's what an incredible defenseman to watch play hockey. And there's so many guys like that on the ice. I mean, you know, Mitch Marner, the pass he made David for the winning goal. There's just so many guys who just, the pace of that game, it just shows you the kind of conditioning these guys have to be in. And, you know, we're going to watch the Canadians and Senators tomorrow night. It's going to look like a game in slow motion. It really is. I mean, you got the best players in the world all on the same ice. And for a tournament that we talked about before, like, is this going to be like an all-star game? Are they going to really care? Is it going to be fun to watch? Is it going to be something to skip? That's the best hockey I've seen in a long, long, long time. And now I'm even more excited towards the Olympics coming up next year when you're going to bring in other teams. It won't just be 4 teams. And again, it just showed why hockey is the greatest sport in the world.
You know, to further your point on Cale Makar, because it's easy to say that, you know, Connor McDavid is the best, because he is the best forward in the NHL. But to the gap between Connor McDavid, let's take last year's 3-point leaders, because that was an exciting race to the end. The gap between Connor McDavid to Nathan McKinnon to Nikita Kucherov, you could make a case for any of them being the best player in the world. Cale Makar, the gap between him and the next best defenseman is just so wide. And to have a player of that, with that type of range, like you said, he has, you know, he skates like the wind. He has the vision of, you know, a Sidney Crosby or Connor McDavid as a defenseman, and he just lays the boom when he has to. And just the other thing I noticed out there, also with Cale Makar, but really a lot of players, namely you mentioned him, Mitch Marner, because Mitch Marner, you know, we talk about players not showing up at the big spot. That reputation follows Mitch Marner around. It follows Austin Matthews around, and it follows a lot of players around. And Mitch Marner, up until the third period last night, I didn't think he was having a good game. I thought he was not gliding out there, because no one was really gliding out there. But in comparison to the level that some of the other players were playing, there was something to be desired. And for a 100-point guy, you expect more. And man, he made some excellent composure plays in that third period. You know, I think that he made a drop pass over to Hagel or Sorelli in the third period that was ended up being, it either missed the net or it got stopped by Hellebuck. But you know, everyone that I'm watching with were screaming at the TV, just shoot the puck, and he just found the puck, put it into open space where a player was going to be. It was just unbelievable to watch. Really, really, Mitch Marner, he really impressed me last night.
The thing that really impressed me about Marner watching this tournament is after the first practice in Brossard, I had a chance to chat with him in the locker room after the practice, and he was just wearing, you know, his long sleeve t-shirt and his long johns and that. I mean, he's like 150 pounds soaking wet. Like, he's built like a 12-year-old boy. He has, like, there's no muscle on him. He's just this skinny little kid. And man, the way he plays, like, you know, he doesn't back away. Like, he's to be that small and to be able to play at that level is remarkable. And John Cooper spoke about it after the first game. He was saying, you know, he's not the best skater. He's not the biggest guy. He doesn't have the hardest shot. But he has something, right? You don't get to the NHL, you don't get to that level without having that something special. And he's just got that vision and a compete level. And it's remarkable that a guy that small as a forward can be that effective playing against these best players in the world. But just the way he sees the game, the way he moves the puck, the way he passes the puck, the way he thinks the game, and all those guys out there. I mean, I was amazed just watching how they always put the puck in good places. They don't make those bad giveaways. And even the goal, it wasn't a case of a guy putting a puck in a bad place, just a breakdown in coverage or whatever, that with McDavid being left that open in the slot. But Yeah, it's Marner. There's so many guys that impressed me. You can go down the list. It was just on different teams. It was just the hockey was just incredible.
Even leading up to that gold medal game, I think there was, at least through a lot of Habs fans' eyes, something left to be desired from the selection of Cirelli. I thought, up until the gold medal game, that you could make the case, obviously, for Mark Scheifele. You could make the case for Matt Duchene, but you're in Montreal. You're going to make the case for Nick Suzuki to be on that team over Anthony Cirelli. And, when there was one play where Cirelli was on the forecheck and he just went so hard into the boards and took his man. The U.S. guy beat him to the puck, but he said, I'm going to finish this hit right now. I don't know if it's because we haven't seen playoff hockey in a long time in Montreal, or, if I just had never really seen that out of Nick Suzuki, and it's nothing against him, but when he took his man into the boards and cranked him into the wall, I said, I don't know if Nick Suzuki would have made that play and would have.
On that stage,
I don't know.
I mean, on that stage, that hockey was so good, so intense, so many good players. You don't want to be the guy who lets the team down. Like guys were, skating, skate through a wall. That every guy in that team was going to skate through a wall. On both teams last night was going to skate through a wall for that game. It was at that level when the adrenaline kicks in. I mean, Nick Suzuki was the only Canadian who would have had a chance of even making Team Canada. I think his decision not to go to the World Championships at the end of last season might have been a determining factor if they're weighing, okay, yes or no. If the guy didn't go, okay, we'll take the other guy. But Nick Suzuki, watching that, I mean, he's a competitive guy, and he talked today saying, like, I wanted to be there. I'm competitive. I want to be there. And it'll be interesting to see if he can earn a spot on that team for next year at the Olympics. I think, again, he's going to be right on that borderline, whether he makes it or not. I think he'll have something to prove the rest of this season and the start of next season that he does want to be there. Nick keeps his emotions pretty much to himself, but I'm sure he was upset that he didn't make that team. He wanted to be on that team. And at that level, as I was mentioning before, it's smart. Like, Nick Suzuki's a smart hockey player.
Yeah.
He that's why he can play at that. He's going to make the smart play, and he's so good defensively. And watching Canada, especially early in the game, how many pucks they intercepted in the neutral zone. The U.S. were having a hard time just getting it into the zone because they were just forechecking. They kept picking off passes and picking off passes and picking off passes. And that's something Nick Suzuki does all the time on a team that's not that great defensively. So if you put Nick Suzuki on a team like Team Canada like that, where they're all playing that solid defensive style of play, I mean, he would have been picking off a ton of passes going through the neutral zone. So for Nick Suzuki, I think that's a good thing for the Canadians, that he's going to, I think he's really going to want to show that he deserves to be on that team next year in the Olympics. I'm sure it's a goal he's set for himself, is to be on that team. And again, a lot of good hockey players don't make that team. Canada is the only country that could put two teams in these tournaments, and both of them could possibly make it to the final, or at least if it was the Olympics, the bronze medal game. We just, our depth of talent is that deep. But for Suzuki, I think in that level and that thing, he would have been able to make that same play that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's hard to say, because it's like I said, we haven't seen the Canadians play that brand of hockey. Because
we haven't seen them play a lot of meaningful games since the Stanley Cup final. They haven't really played meaningful games, right?
Well, that's it. And then you just look down the list of the players on Team Canada. Most, if not 90% of that team has won a Stanley Cup. They knew what it meant to play in a Game 7 of a Cup final, and this is probably, they treated it the same way. That was a Game 7 Cup final, and you need those guys like Sam Bennett. I mean, this guy draws into the lineup against the U.S. after being scratched against Sweden. You look at his stat line last night. This is exactly what you want to talk about doing your job. Scores a massive goal, but on top of that, 6 shots, 5 hits. Guy's a wrecking ball out there.
He was the most noticeable player for the first 3 periods. He was, you say, all over the place. And that goal he scored was just a beauty. I mean, Hellebuck just gave him that little corner up top, and he put it right in there. You're talking about it's the guys who have been there, guys who have experience. I mean, Drew Doughty, played 6 games this year, and they call him up. But those 6 games he played, he averaged 26 minutes of ice time a game with the Kings. Like, he's been there, seen it, done it, won cups, played for Canada before. Him and Crosby were the only two leftovers from the last Olympics when Canada won. And I had fun watching Doughty last night just because he's the old guy out there. He was so passionate when he spoke to us at the first practice of how bad he wanted to be on this team and how disappointed he was when he wasn't originally on it. And then he was brought in as a replacement. And you knew he was going to do everything he possibly could in that event, because this might be his last chance, right? I mean, he wasn't originally on this team, so he's probably not going to be on the Olympic team next year. But what a way to go out. He really, really impressed me with the way he played last night, and just that the hockey smarts that he has.
Yeah, no mistakes out of Drew Doughty. He was another play. It was noticeable how he didn't make mistakes.
Yeah.
That was a big key. Just all those guys were just so composed in the moment. To bring it back to Nick Suzuki, to looking towards the Olympics, he knows what he has to do now. He knows he has to bring it, because I think it's fair to say, while this is a championship team, this team's going to look a lot different next year. I think the bottom 6 is going to look vastly different. I think it's fair to say that Seth Jarvis will be on the chopping block. Travis Konechny will be on the chopping block. Brad Marchand will be on the chopping block. I don't expect him to be there. And the thing is, I was having this discussion with some friends last night, and they were saying, I don't know if he'll do it, because there's still Scheifele, Macklin Celebrini, Connor Bedard, and they started naming young guys. And I said to them, I go, the difference, and they said, like, Canada's going to want Connor Bedard there. They're going to want Macklin Celebrini. And I said, this isn't an NHL event. This isn't marketing the NHL. This is best on best to its core. It's not an orchestrated event. This is what it's all about. This is what, other than winning the Stanley Cup, this is what Canadian hockey players dream of, winning a gold medal at the Olympics. And you can't just say, we need a young team. You need a good mix of both. And Nick Suzuki has that chance now, because he was, like you said, I wasn't sure if he would make that play. You kind of convinced me. And I think it's exactly how you were describing Marner. Nick Suzuki's not the best skater out there. He's not the best shooter. He makes good first pass, but he's not the best passer out there. But he has it. He has something. You don't become a point per game player in the NHL, or just shy of a point per game player in the NHL, if you don't have it on a bad team on top of it.
Yeah. And I remember talking with Suzuki's dad a while ago, and I was talking about how Nick doesn't waste any energy on the ice, right? He's very smart. He knows when to go on a burst and when not to. And he was saying that, one of his junior coaches, or one of his early coaches, thought he was lazy because of the way he played. Nick Suzuki's not a lazy hockey player. He's a smart hockey player. He lets the play. He reads the play so well that he doesn't have to be charging all over the place. And you compare that to an Alex Newhook, right, who's running all over the ice all the time as fast as he can, but sometimes he doesn't have to be going 100 miles an hour, right? And sometimes it doesn't help him. So for Suzuki, he's just such a smart player with that. But you're right. I mean, next year, Celebrini, Bedard, there's going to be other young guys he's going to be competing with for a spot on that team also. It's along with the guys who were there for this one. And I'm sure John Cooper will be back as coach unless he decides he doesn't want to. I can't imagine why he wouldn't. And he's going to be faithful to some of these guys who won this for him, right? You talked about Jordan Binnington before. Like, you got to figure Jordan Binnington's the starting goalie next year when Canada starts the Olympics, just because Cooper put his faith in him and it paid off. And some of these other guys, I think it might be the same for Cooper. It's going to be hard to leave off some of the guys that were on this team.
And it's funny because, I look back. I was feeling very patriotic yesterday before the game. And I was watching just a YouTube compilation. It was just every goal that Canada scored in the 2010 Olympics. And I'm looking at this blue line, and I'm seeing Chris Pronger. I'm seeing a young Shea Weber. But the point I'm trying to realize, I see Chris Pronger, Dan Boyle, Scott Niedermayer. These were old guys nearing the end of their careers at that point in 2010. but they were the best and they were experienced and they had been there and they knew what it took. So, you see, Crosby is a given. I mean, at this point, if he's still playing, he'll be there, but he's going to be 38. The U.S. is the new young hot team because they didn't really have anyone that old. Their oldest player was Brock Nelson, but he was a fourth liner. He's not one of their most important players, the U.S. So the U.S. are going to get older, more skilled, and that's how you're going to go against them, is you're going to bring your experience of all the guys that have been there. So it's going to be interesting to see, because I just think the top 6 is, you can't take anyone out there. Cirelli will maybe be there. I'm not so convinced. Brandon Hagel, just the fire he brings, that's exactly what Canada needed. Because you want to talk about, like we said, it's unfortunate that the politics came into it and it got ugly, but that's kind of a big reason why this game and the game last Saturday meant so much to so many people. Because, I was talking with Agnolo and Sammy just before the show, and I said, this reminded me of the Canadiens' COVID run against the Vegas Golden Knights when Arturi Lehkonen scored that goal. We needed this. Mm-hmm. Canadians everywhere needed this. And, a hockey game in a 4-team tournament is not going to solve the world's issues. No. But we have been bogged down by the U.S. We're getting made fun of. We're their little brothers, and then they beat us in hockey in the preliminary round.
Threats that we're going to be the 51st state.
But that's it. Our identities are being attacked as who we are. And, a lot of people, maybe, not to get on this too crazy political rant, but a lot of people may have lost that over the past couple of years, have lost their, their sense of pride in their country. But, you come for us, it's as the saying goes, you come for the king, you better go for the head, and the U.S. went for the body, and Canada just slapped them back, and just Canadians everywhere. We needed that win. I was texting with 3 of my friends last night that live in the U.S. They're some of my best friends in the entire world. And I just couldn't stop spamming them once that goal by Connor McDavid went in, because that's just what it means to us. Canada needed that win.
I saw something on Twitter. We're the people known for saying sorry. We always say sorry until we get pushed too far, and then you're going to be sorry. Yeah, and I think it just got pushed to the point that it went beyond hockey, unfortunately. And in some ways, you're right. In some ways, it was a good thing. I mean, in some ways, Canada stood up and said, "No, we're not going to be the 51st state. You're not going to walk over us. You're not going to disrespect us the way they are." And it's been ugly on social media also. And at the end of the day, Canada came out on top. And if Jordan Binnington doesn't make those couple of saves in overtime, we're having a different conversation right now. But to go back to talk about the Canadian teams. Before the U.S. won that first game, Canada had won 17 straight best-on-best games against the U.S. 17 in a row. Mm-hmm. And Matthew Tkachuk said after those fights in the first game, it was because we're going to show them it's our time. They said it had nothing to do with the anthem booing. Is America saying this is our time. And they had their game, right? But when it came down to the biggest game, Canada came up on top. And overtime, anything can happen. But Canada had so many players, as you mentioned, that have been there and done that. They've been in those big moments. They realize you can't leave Austin. You can't leave Connor McDavid wide open in the slot in overtime. Guys who get all that and how one little mistake can be so crucial. And we're talking about building the team for next year. They had 2 practices before this tournament, right? There was no time for team building. But by the end of the tournament, this was a team.
Oh, yeah.
And that's going to factor into, it's only a year from now. That this team is built. This is a team. So do you want to take 5 guys off of this team and bring in 5 new guys? Probably not. That team thing, right? That team, these guys, these guys all sort of know each other a little bit from being together. I was asking Aiden Hill, and he knew nothing about really Sam Montembeault. They had talked a little bit at the draft, but so a lot of guys didn't know each other before. Maybe they didn't like each other, playing against each other or what, but then they build this bond over 10 days, right? They were together the whole time, right? They were in hotels in Montreal. They were in hotels in Boston. And they built the team. They built the unity. And I think that's something that Hockey Canada will factor in when they're building this team next year, that these guys have been been there, done that together only a year ago. And can they pick up that momentum right next year at the Olympics, right from where they left off from this tournament?
You know, it's interesting because when you think back to we're so littered with talent that we're picking apart, oh, should Anthony Cirelli, who's a more than a point per game player this year, should he have been on the team instead of Nick Suzuki, who is a point per game player? And just these little things, because I remember back in 2014, the last time it was best on best, the outrage that came from Bobby Clark when Claude Giroux was left off that team.
Yeah.
And the outrage of just some of these players just being left by the wayside. You know, PK Subban made the team, but he was a bench warmer. He didn't. I don't even think he played a game in that tournament. And people were outraged because he had just won, or he was having a Norris season. And you know, Matt Duchene was the extra forward in that tournament. And we're so there's really, it feels like it's easy to get it right, but it's a lot deeper than that in what you just said, in that it's easy to just pick guys together, whatever, but there's a lot of work that still goes into this, into winning. You know, just because you're Canada, it's not a given. How many times have we seen, you know, now in the World Juniors, Canada crapping out of the tournament and the U.S., you know, taking their victory lap over us?
But that's a case of the U.S., the World Juniors. They've already built that team because all these kids came up together through that U.S. development team. They all know each other. They are a team, but when they go to the World Juniors, then they go their separate ways when they get to the NHL. And I think that's a big reason why the U.S. does so well at the World Juniors, and I think we'll continue to do well at the World Juniors because they are a team. You know, the Canadian teams are a bunch of guys taking from all these junior teams and whatever all over, and they're thrown together for this one tournament, whereas the U.S. guys have a history together, playing together, and I think that factors into what they do at the World Juniors. I think that's a big reason for the junior success. And, you know, we were talking about Suzuki before. I just looked up some quotes here from when I talked with Nick the other day. I was asking about the pace of play in this tournament. And he said, it's a good line. He says, I'm not surprised. As those games are kind of making superstar players look average. It's just crazy the amount of good players out there on the ice. And it's true. I mean, you know, first line stars in the NHL were fourth liners on this team, and, you know, top defensemen were on the third pairing. And, you know, I also asked him if he had wished he had been there. We were talking about earlier. And he says, as a competitive guy, I wanted to be there, but there's so many good players for Canada. I'm sure there's a lot of players that felt the way I felt. It's a tough team to crack, and hopefully there's a couple of more chances at it. And Suzuki is fairly young, and he will get more than one chance at making this team. And if he doesn't make the Olympic team next year, maybe 2 years after that, he does make the World Cup of Hockey team. But it was just, again, just the amount of talent on the ice there was just crazy.
So we've given Canada all their flowers, deservedly so. One guy who deserves a lot, you know, it's funny because they built kind of a playoff rivalry, I would say, in the past, you know, remove, I don't know, 5 years when the Canadians were making the playoffs. And John Cooper is like public enemy. Before Nikita Kucherov's quote after they won the Stanley Cup, John Cooper was like public enemy number one. And a lot of these guys on Team Canada, they're the type of player that they're not on your team.
Brad
Marchand. Brad Marchand, Brandon Hagel, Sam Bennett, you know, a lot of these guys, you hate their guts. And Cooper, you know, he said it best last night after the game, in that, you know, talking about what this means for Canada. He said, this wasn't just 24 guys or 20 guys who won this game to win the game. This was for 40 million people. And, you know, I didn't even watch that live. I didn't see it on TV. I just saw it on Twitter. And reading that quote, I got goosebumps because, again, Canada needed this victory. You know, we needed it. We're in the middle of winter. It's minus 30 every day. And it's, you know, 45-kilometer-an-hour winds, and it's terrible to go outside because when you go out, when it's nice enough to go outside or not cold enough to go outside, it's gray outside, and when it's sunny out, it's minus 40. We needed this. We needed this bad, and I think this ignited Canadian pride again because, frankly, I haven't felt this proud to be Canadian since the 2010 Olympics. You know, when Crosby scored that goal, I'd never been prouder to feel Canadian, and just we're lucky that we live in a country where, you know, hockey is our, you know, unifying factor.
Yeah, it is.
And it's a part of us. It's a part of our identity. I had people texting me last night that's literally saying, I don't watch hockey, and I've never in my life wanted something more than for Canada to win this game.
Oh, the TV ratings, I haven't seen them yet, but I'm sure they're going to be massive. My sister, who's sort of a casual hockey fan, sports fan, not a big sports fan, she called me yesterday morning, I guess it was, and said, what channel is it on? So it's Sportsnet and TBS Sports. And she went, I don't know. I'm going to buy it. And so she signed up for Sportsnet for the month to watch last night's game. And then she texted me this morning and says, the best $15 I've ever spent in my life. And then she said she was crying when the guys were singing "O Canada" at the end of the game. And I think a lot of people across the country had that same feeling. Hockey unites us not only in the country, but in Montreal, the Canadians. English, French, white, black, it doesn't matter. The Canadians bring the city together, right? Immigrants who come to Canada, one of the first things PK Subban's dad talking about when he came to Canada from Jamaica, hockey was the thing that got him to adjust to Canadian culture. How many, my father came here from Scotland and my mother, and hockey was a thing. You know, they got into hockey. He became a Blackhawks fan because he liked Bobby Hull, watching Bobby Hull the first time he had seen it. So it was I wrote a column this week saying this was going to be one of those where were you when moments. And it really was. Go back to Salt Lake City Olympics, the poster I have right behind me. That was the same type of feeling, right, going into that game. And you're right, Canada, this was the most politicized hockey game since the 72 Summit Series, which I'm old enough. I was 9 years old at the time. I remember it, vaguely, not everything, but I remember it. I don't remember the political parts back then because I was a 9-year-old kid. But this was the biggest hockey game for Canada since the 72 Summit Series because it was about so much more than just hockey. And it was about, Canada, like almost our way of life against the American way of life in some ways too. And that, so many of the tweets you see from Americans, Canada will be lucky to become part of the States and become the 51st state. You should be begging we don't feel that way. Very few of us feel that way. We're proud Canadians. And I think that factored into why the emotions were so high. I mean, I'm watching the game last night with 60 guys or whatever. They were playing the Kirkland Old Timers in a room, and the room just exploded when that lost goal. I'm just watching guys watching the end, chewing fingernails, and the World Cup of soccer. You see that in the cafes right around Montreal where people are watching their home countries. And for us, it's hockey. Hockey is whether you played it, whether you didn't play it, whether you're a big fan, whether you don't watch hockey. I'm sure there were a lot of people on both sides of the border might have been watching hockey for the first time last night, especially in the States. And even though their team lost, like what a selling point that was for hockey.
Oh my God. That was the next point I wanted to make was, so we've given Canada all their flowers. The NHL, that was just 10 out of 10. The only thing that could have been the better result, it's funny, we were joking after the game once, they're handing out all the medals, everything. And they're handing, they were handing Nathan McKinnon the MVP of the tournament, award. And you look at Gary Bettman's face, and I just said to all my friends, I go, he's so mad that Canada won. He's so mad because that would have been after probably the 1980, after 1980, that would have been the biggest thing for hockey in America. That would have, just taken off. And you want to just take it back to, where they really deserve their flowers was on Saturday night when Canada played US at the Bell Center. And what was on the other channel was the NBA All-Star Game. And what were all the Monday morning sports shows talking about? How the players don't give a damn. They don't give a rat's ass. They don't want to show up. They don't care. Money.
Picture.
That's it. They don't care. And that NBA ratings are dropping. People were flipping over to the Four Nations tournament. I'm seeing, football players, you're seeing Christian McCaffrey, running back for the San Francisco 49ers, tweeting about hockey last night. He tweeted last night, okay, US won game 1, Canada won game 2. Let's get a game 3 for all the marbles. You know, it's just the influence. I'm big on football Twitter, just like, you know, all those hockey meme accounts. I'm big onto that in the football world, and all of them are tweeting the same thing. This is the first hockey game I've ever watched. This is the best thing I've ever seen in my life. You know, that alone, if the US won that game, this would have, you know, hockey would have shot up, and give it a couple years, and, you know, the NHL's taken over the NBA as the second biggest league.
There was a time not long ago. I remember covering Sports Illustrated 15 years ago, maybe, that their cover was how the NHL was taking over from the NBA, and then it switched. But now, I mean, you were saying tip of the hat to the NHL. I'm going to say tip of the hat to the NHLPA, because the owners of the NHL teams would probably prefer they don't play these games, right? I mean, Matthew Tkachuk's hurt now, right? The Florida Panthers. Brady Tkachuk might be hurt. There's so many. Theodore's out. The owners probably would have preferred they didn't play these games, apart from the fact they're going to make some money off it. But the players cared.
Oh, yeah.
And if the players didn't care, we wouldn't have cared. And that was our question. I remember the podcast we did before this. Is this going to be a glorified all-star game? Are they just going to go out there and go through the motions? And they didn't. They battled. They battled as hard, and probably harder than they even do in an NHL game. This was NHL playoffs, even take it to another level beyond that, because you're playing for your country, not just playing for a team that gives you a paycheck. And kudos to the players. And comparing that, I saw PK Subban on one of the American things talking about that. That's the difference is hockey players care, and NBA players who make a lot more money are just, you know, the load management thing that's going on now. And, you know, Michael Jordan played every game. Kobe Bryant played. These guys, you had to tie them to the bench to try and get them off the court. They weren't saying, oh, I can't play. I'm making $60 million a year, but 3 games in a week is too much. You know, and I paid $1,000 for 2 tickets to bring my kid and I to go watch LeBron James. Oh, he's not playing tonight because he's resting. Like, that's BS. And that's what's happening now. If the players don't care, why should the fans care? And that's why NHL fans don't care about the All-Star game anymore, because the players don't care about the All-Star game, and it shows. And the NBA players don't care about their All-Star game even less. And they don't even seem to care about some of the regular season games with the load management stuff going on. So this is a really good opportunity now, even though the U.S. lost. A lot of people who watch that game, even if the U.S. lost, are probably going to watch hockey again. And to go watch a hockey game live, I might have told you this story on a previous podcast. I was in Las Vegas a few years ago covering the Canadiens. And I get in the Uber, and Uber driver's talking, you know, we're talking whatever, and he says, where are you from, or whatever. And he's a big black guy. He says to me, he says, hockey. I said, do you like hockey? He says, man, he says, before the Golden Knights came here, I didn't know anything about hockey. I couldn't care less about hockey. And then he says, and one of my buddies told me he had tickets for the game. He says, you want to go with me? I was like, nah, I don't want to go watch hockey. And he says, come on, it's free, we'll go. And he's like, his face lit up. Man, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen. That's the greatest game I've ever seen. He says, oh, man, I like it more than, like, now he's a hockey fan. And this is a guy, like, he basically got dragged to a game in Vegas because his friend had free tickets. And, like, if you haven't seen an NHL game live, I mean, on TV it looks fast. I mean, I can't imagine how fast that game was if you were sitting down in the lower bowl in Boston last night. I mean, on TV slows it down quite a bit. And so now you have a fan who maybe watched the game hadn't watched it before, watched the game on TV, and then they live in Philadelphia, or they live in Vegas, or they live in Tampa, or they live somewhere and they haven't been to a game before, and then they go, well, maybe I'll go see a game. And if you go to an NHL game live, it's hard to beat for entertainment value and just the speed, the hitting, everything involved. I mean, and especially if you're in a good seat, the live game is so fast. And I remember in the Kraft Hockeyville games a couple of years ago in Gander and Booktush, I covered those, and they're in little tiny rinks. So there's no press box. So we're sitting like 8 rows up in the corner. And preseason game, and just how fast it is, and how they have no time and space. And again, I said earlier, it's the greatest game in the world. And to open more eyes in the U.S., which is the big market. And you're right, Gary Bettman, he won't say it, but he would have loved to have Team USA win that game. But they didn't. And but I think they won over. You know, most Canadians are hockey fans or know about hockey, but I'm sure that this tournament won over some fans in the U.S. I mean, yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeting after those fights. Now I'm a hockey fan. You know, it's
so you want to talk viewership. So Sammy just wrote to us in our chat. 9.3 million viewers on ESPN. That's in the States.
And they had 4.4 for the first game.
That's
so
right.
More
so
than
doubled.
They more than
doubled. And the most watched regular season game, I forget who it was between. I think it was New York against Boston or Tampa. And that was on ABC in a primetime slot. It had $1.1 million viewers. Yeah. And that was 9.3. And it's impossible to get away from, and it's impossible to get away from it because, you know, ESPN, Sports Center, it was all over their Instagrams, all the highlights of all of all the goals and the game-winning goal. It was all over everywhere. You could not get away from it on social media.
And out of those 9.3 million, 40% maybe were watching hockey for the first time. Is that too high? Maybe, but I don't think so. You know, the hockey in the U.S., the cities of the NHL teams have their hardcore fans, right? And like the original 6 cities, like Philly, New York, those are hockey cities. But you know, like Nashville has, I'm going to say like 60,000 hockey fans and 20,000 seats, and they sell them out. You know, or same in Tampa or some of these places, San Jose. But so this is 9.3 million people. A lot of those people would have been watching hockey for the first time, and now maybe they'll go watch another game. And from an NHL standpoint, they're saying the owners probably could have lived without this tournament. But if they start seeing this moving forward, where they can surpass the NBA in popularity and take some of that NBA advertising dollars, that's good for everybody. That's good for the owners.
You know what?
The players, the salary cap will go up, all that kind of stuff.
You know what? As much as, again, one of those guys you want to strangle if he's not on your team, and Team Canada, you know, except if you were a Calgary Flames fan a couple of years ago, you don't have the pleasure of cheering for a player like Matthew Tkachuk. Yeah. He understood it. He got it. Because this guy played in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final and won the freaking game, won the cup in Game 7. And he said, this is the biggest game of my life.
Yeah.
He understood it because it's not. You won the freaking cup in Game 7 of the Cup Final. That's the biggest game of your life to date. But he understood what this game also, you know, as much as it meant for Canada.
With his brother for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, as much as it meant for Canada, the win, and how much that game meant for us as Canadians, that meant a lot to U.S. hockey fans because they knew if they put out that message that people were going to watch and that they were going to get eyes on their sport. You know, Matthew Tkachuk, also hat off to you because you got it.
I know those 3 fights in the 9 seconds. I mean, some people want fighting out of hockey, and I could live without fighting in hockey, but violence sells. The NHL knows it. Those videos of those fights were all over the NHL social media promoting this game, right? Violence sells. Look at the UFC. And without those 3 fights in the first 9 seconds, rightly or wrongly, I don't think the same interest would have been there from people in the States who aren't necessarily hockey fans, right?
Yeah.
This is one of the things that makes the NHL unique is that players fight. And you know, 3 fights in 9 seconds got everybody's attention. You know, as John Cooper said, I didn't see any fans leaving the arena when the fights broke out because they were disgusted by it. And, you know, it's one of those things, fighting in hockey is one of those debates. And again, from what we learn about from CTE and whatnot, and I'm so worried that one of these guys, when his helmet comes off in a fight, he's going to hit his head on the ice and die on the ice. And that's going to change everything, I think, the way people look at fighting in hockey. But in this instance, I think those 3 fights, without those 3 fights, they get 9.3 million on ESPN? Probably not, because it was it was violent sells, and it makes sports. And we're talking about not caring. You have NBA guys going through the motions, and then you have hockey players in they're not playing for their teams, right? This is
call it what you could call it what it is. It was an exhibition tournament.
An exhibition tournament, and guys are bare knuckle fighting at center ice.
Mm-hmm.
They care. You don't do that if you don't care. And these guys and again, kudos to the NHLPA and the players. They wanted this. They wanted best on best. The NHL took it away from them. Bettman didn't want to send them to the last 2 Olympics, and they finally got it. And they showed the NHL what they missed by not having this the last 10 years or whatever it was, by depriving the non-hockey fan from watching hockey and maybe becoming a hockey fan.
Well, it's as simple as this. You want to apply it to a real world situation. I don't care what no all-star game is must-see TV. Let alone a skills competition, because that's what was on.
Baseball is the only one, because baseball, there's no physical contact, really. Baseball is the only one that is a legitimate game.
Sure, but in terms of skills competition, you're not glued to the TV. You can't look away. So what are you doing if you're around my age? You're with your buddies. It's Saturday night. You're okay, let's get together, have a couple beers, order some pizza, and watch the NBA skills competition. And then within 10 minutes, you're bored out of your mind. You go on your phone. You start scrolling Twitter. The first thing you see is Canada and US beating the crap out of each other at center ice. Snap call, you switch to the game. It's easy as that. It's as easy as that. That's why I think this tournament did a lot of good for hockey.
I'm not a big basketball fan. My son's a huge basketball fan. But the guy who won the slam dunk apparently doesn't even play in the NBA. He's a G League guy.
Yeah. And he's won it 3 years in a row.
Yeah, so that's like, okay, we're gonna have a skills competition in the NHL, hardest shot, and here's Johnny Smith from the AHL's whatever,
from the Utica Comets,
who's gonna boom the puck. Okay, well, who is this dude? And like that just shows. I mean, I remember the slam dunk competitions. Vince Carter, Michael Jordan, was must see TV, right? But now all the superstars in the NBA, well, I'm not going to dunk contest.
Well, the most damning.
I'm too big for that. I might get hurt. You're dunking.
The most damning thing of that, and he actually, it's kind of an unfortunate thing where now Victor Wembanyama, if for our fans who don't know who that is, because you're hockey fans, he's the next big thing in the NBA. He's like 7'6", unbelievable player. He's going to be the future of the league. There was a clip of him and Chris Paul, his teammate, in some sort of relay race or whatever. They didn't even shoot the ball. They just, tossed it just so they could move on to the next station. And that was the most damning thing of all. Anyways, enough about the NBA. We're this hour has flown by. We got to talk at least a little bit about tomorrow night's game. So I have this theory, Stu. I am not back on the Canadians making the playoff train at all. But what I will say is Jake Sanderson and Brady Tkachuk just came off of, to date, they're the biggest games of their careers. And they're going back to game, I don't know what it is for Ottawa. 57, let's call it. Can you see a scenario where those two guys, arguably the two most important players on the Ottawa Senators, come in on a bit of a down, high emotional game, and they go to that? Could you see the Canadians jumping all over them?
Possible, but Brady Tkachuk's, I mean, he would go out and play shinny and run you through the boards, right? Yeah. That's just, I mean, I like the way Brady Tkachuk plays. Yeah. A lot of people don't like him. If the Canadians had drafted him instead of Kotkaniemi, he'd probably be captain of the Canadians right now. And everybody would love him, right?
Highest selling jersey.
The one I'm looking forward to seeing tomorrow, after I practiced this morning, I said to Marty St. Louis, so I guess Dobush is going to start tomorrow because Montembeault hasn't been in any of the practices. No, the plan's to start Montembeault. And he talked about what a great experience this tournament would have been for him, just being around these guys. Marty's been in that environment. And he talked about how one of the Olympics he went to, he didn't play one of the games. He basically sat on the bench the whole game and was a cheerleader. And he said just the experience learning from that. And he says he's going to want to play. He's been practicing for the last 10 days against the best players in the world shooting on him. And he's going to be, as Marty said, he's going to want to play. He just watched Jordan Binnington do what he did, right? And if you saw last night when Montembeault went up to get his medal, he was in his suit and tie or whatever, but he was beaming.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, I didn't get to dress for a game. He was beaming.
He was all in. He was
like,
all in.
What an experience that would have been for him. Be on the same ice in practice, Crosby, and in the room, and hearing the way these guys talk, and being around Bennington, who's won a Stanley Cup, and picking his brain, and Aiden Hill, who's won a Stanley Cup, and picking his brain. What an incredible experience for him. And when Marty gave that answer, I said, yeah, that makes total sense to start Sam Montembeault tomorrow.
Yeah.
It really does. And we're going to see, you're asking how if Brady Tkachuk is going to be maybe a bit of a lull in his game. Well, Montembeault is going to be a spark in his game. Like, it's something that I want to be there at the Olympics next year. If I'm not the number one guy, maybe I can be
on the bench
guy, or I want to go back as the third guy and experience the Olympics. I mean, imagine getting to experience the Olympics in the Olympic Village and everything that comes with it, and going to Italy and that. So I'm interested now to see Sam Montembeault and how he plays tomorrow night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be. I think. Listen, we gotta. Again, we went from Game 7, gold medal, Stanley Cup, whatever you want to call it, to back to Game 57 or 58, whatever it is. Yeah. So it's going to, the quality won't be there, but we've seen before where you have bad defensive teams play each other, makes for high-scoring hockey. And that's what we want, because we didn't get high-scoring hockey in this tournament, So
there's a rivalry. I mean, there's a rivalry with the Senators.
Yes.
I mean, after this, we get Carolina on Tuesday, and then San Jose next Thursday at the Bell Center. So I think, Ottawa, Montreal is a pretty good rivalry right now. Saturday night hockey in Canada, I think it's going to be a good game, although it's going to look a lot friggin' slower than last time.
It will, and it's going to be a lot different going from who was it on the power play? Cale Makar, Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, and Sam Reinhart over to
Christian Dvorak.
No disrespect, but I think it's fair to say they are not of the same quality of those guys.
No.
Over to Christian Dvorak, Kirby Dach, Alex Newhook, Mike Matheson, and I'm forgetting who the fifth
Gallagher.
Guy is. There you go. It's going to be a little different and maybe a little tough on the eyes, but we'll adjust quickly because, hey, this is hockey. Yeah. As we've talked about it, it's the greatest game in the world. It's our game, and it's only in Canada where you could see an NHL arena sold out just as much as you could see a youth hockey tournament game sold out.
Well, 26 games left, and I don't think the Habs can get back in the playoff mix, but I hope they could. I really hope they do. They prove me wrong and at least get close enough, 2-3 points behind, that the Montrealers can get treated to some entertaining hockey that means something going down the stretch. I'd really like to see that, especially coming off of the high of this. I think Montreal's desperate to have the hope of a team getting into the playoffs.
Oh yeah, because you know what? I would want to see. You know what they just need to stop having the deflating, just coming out flat and getting flattened by a team.
2-0. 4 minutes in,
Yeah, and then the 4-0 losses to New Jersey and Minnesota. Just you gotta give something, because these fans are smart. We know the fans know where the team is and where they're going and where they're headed. But you gotta give the fans something for the now. It can't always be about future. Yeah. So, if we're returning back to, if you're going to lose, at least lose with flair. Let's go back to that if you're not going to win.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I'm looking forward to the game tomorrow night, even though it won't be as entertaining as last night's game was.
That's it, Stu. Thank you very much. Enjoy tomorrow night's game, and again, take the Canada glasses off, because it's you'll be able to breathe in between.
There you go. Fast forward on the remote.
Exactly. Stu, thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend. That was Stu Cowan. I'm Matt Ohayon. Thank you all for watching and listening wherever you are. Go Canada, and US. Sorry, it's still our game. We'll catch you next time.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast. is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaVita.tv, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.